All right, everybody ready? Well, I guess we're going to Sarah here to figure out her thing.
Yeah, I'm just changing my camera.
Let me switch microphones for me.
There we go. Okay.
Also, by the way, like
just
you
got a
need
tinkle.
to hire an employee to clean up your fucking Discord because you have way too many fucking channels in there.
Yeah, I got it's about to be done here. Next day I have
You have to like organize it in some way. Are people even using all of those channels? Like you have like 100
Well,
channels.
if you go to most of them are the politics channels, but if you go to them, you see that I'm like posting links in there like every other day. It's how I like, everybody's like, I need a source. I'm like, you know what, you want a source?
No, we have a new problem to diagnose. This is what cocaine does to you. The idea that you are posting every other day in all of those fucking channels is proof positive that you have a drug problem, sir. Like you need to calm the fuck down.
No, it's called, I'm sick of these bastards going, where's your source? And I go, oh, I got a source for you, bitch. And then I say, here it is.
Just another fucking tweet.
You could go and find it in this Discord right here, and it's in one of these wonderfully organized calls.
Nobody could find anything in this Discord, okay? This is
Wanda Watch has
a
nothing
mad
in it.
scientist
Half of these
laboratory, and they're like, no, I have an organization system. I know where everything is.
It's because I expanded one of us from the other channel.
I will say, at least you have a different date. These aren't all posted on the same day.
Well, yeah, they're different days.
Actually, March 3rd, you were watching of quite a few countries on March 3rd.
Yeah, we go through things. All right, everybody ready? I'll wait for everybody's back. We're gonna go. Camera's up. God damn, it sounds like you're in an airplane.
Is my chat here? Where's my chat?
Yeah, can someone?
No chats.
You are getting negative points, Pentuple.
Losing. It sounds 10 times worse now that you've done whatever you just did.
What? My sound?
Yeah, your sound is ass.
It sounds like you're in a fucking airplane engine now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really?
Here, mute yourself and let's see how much better it gets.
It sounds like we can hear like an AC running next to your speaker or something.
Holy God, it's terrible.
It took me forever to finally get it to where I could use my speakers.
It feels okay now.
Beautiful not having to have headphones on.
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna need you to fix that shit immediately, Papa. Immediately.
It's still like just that noise.
No, now I think it's better now.
Is it good if I just speak into it like this?
This is great. This is great. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think this is much better.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna go live now. Everybody ready? Ready? Yeah,
God damn it! The fucking airplane headquarters are back.
Jesus, why? What happened? It was totally fine.
I don't know.
I told you.
I've not been streaming as much, so I haven't really had to deal with this. I guess. The gain is all the way down. I have it on that pattern, which is the same one that he's using.
Okay, we're turning him down to like 50% volume.
All right, I'm gonna win.
I'll just mute when I'm.
Bro, listen, one of my gay friends said this the other day. I think it applies right now. This is shittier than 2 gay dicks. Holy Christ, bro, this is bad. Like I cannot even believe it. Yeah, how
What's
bad?
wrong?
Like an audience.
Is it better if I just unmute when I speak and then I'll mute? Is this okay?
He's been taken by Twitch to such degree he has to be like, by the way, this was said by my gay friend.
Yeah, great Gibbs. It's Gibbs.
Just tell a fucking joke.
No, for real, just say it. No one cares.
Like you're gonna say the joke anyways, you know, like fucking.
Yeah, well, it's funnier when the gay guy says it, so we're gonna make that.
No, it comes across as like cloying, like you're just trying to.
Point.
It doesn't bear well, I think.
Good.
No,
you know what?
That's right.
Are we?
You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Doesn't sound like
Everyone
an airplane
quiet.
engine.
A
so
woman
much
is
better.
speaking.
Oh, thank you.
Allison, are you good? Can you hear us, Balderson? Okay, good. All right, so I posted the format.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. And no airplane sound.
You have your new mic set up, Ben. Yay!
I have both mics set up. I have them both set up. They both sound fantastic.
I'm talking to Ben.
Oh, he does.
Ben got a new mic.
Are we ready? All right.
We are ready. I'm just gonna mute when I'm not talking, and hopefully it's bearable.
That's good. That's the first words I wanted.
I don't know why them shitty Yeti Blues anymore. I was told those suck balls.
Oh, you sound
It's also
so
got a broken
good.
cord that's taped to it, so it is due for an upgrade.
This
Just
is what I
fucking
wanted. I
duct
said we're
taped
going
on.
live, and then we have an update on all the tech issues. Welcome in, everybody. We are going live now. We are live doing the debate championship series. Now I have an echo from somewhere. I got you. Oh, good. We're having all the Italians. All right, good. We're back. Okay. Welcome to the Debate Championship Series. This is the finals, despite the comedy of areas that has occurred. It's a championship. We have our finalists here. We have Fabian Liberty versus Pentuple. We're going to be debating, it looks like border security.
You muted. Oh. Sorry, I thought I was muted. Sarah muted, and I
Can
thought someone
someone
I thought you
can
muted
someone
me, and I was
shut
telling my chat that
shut
you
him the
muted me,
fuck
and
up?
I'm gonna just shut up.
I'm just going to fucking server mute till we're done. All right. Yeah, this motherfucker, bro. I swear to Christ, every time, Pentuple, every time. All right, so the prompt is going to be, let me just pull this back up that we have agreed upon today. Excuse me for a moment. It is the United States. Wait, no, that's not it. Border restrictions are a threat to American liberty, property rights, and economic prosperity. It looks like the affirmative is going to be Fabian, and the negative is going to be Pentuple. So we will start with Fabian. Let me just pull up a timer, and we can kick this off. All right. So whenever you're ready, Fabian, you got 7 minutes, and this is going to be 30 seconds, and this is going to be 10 seconds. You know what I'm saying? All right.
All right, Grib. So thank you. I'm happy to be back. I took a little break for my mental health, and we're doing, and my physical health. We're doing wonderful. Let me get right into this because this is going to be long. I did this just for Pentuple. In 1919, America was faced with a slew of economic and social problems, from urbanization, industrialization, and mass immigration from Europe. These problems were predominantly the stresses of natural economic changes from industrialization, but were exacerbated by the progressive era socialists' state funding of railroads and public work projects, pushing immigrants into tenant housing and railroad saloons. Of course, the socialist is never wrong. And just 6 years after the U.S. created the federal income tax, allowing them to shift from alcohol sales taxes, they created a red herring for America to blame in lieu of their socialist policies. They're going to blame immigrants and alcohol for America's problems. What followed was a dark period of American history that continued into the Great Depression, known as Prohibition. The progressives blamed America's woes on alcohol and immigrants and decided banning the sale of alcohol would solve everything. Any student of history knows that the coalition of the socialist progressives and temperance movement was disastrous. At first, alcohol usage slowed, but quickly black markets formed, leading to a 78% rise in homicides, crime families, and further economic hardships in areas riddled with crime. Government production of rot gut killed tens of thousands of Americans, blinding and paralyzing people, with over 50,000 Americans permanently disabled by Ginger Jake alone. Federal criminal cases quadrupled, prisons expanded nearly 400%, government corruption ran rampant, and most importantly, government power expanded. The point of this little history lesson is to proclaim that we are in a similar predicament today. Taxes have skyrocketed. Prices are out of control. No one can afford a home. We are a society drowning in debt and wars to maintain the oil-backed U.S. dollar. And instead of addressing the socialist policies of the Democrat and Republican parties that have led to this point, policies like tenfold expansion in housing regulations, massive tax increases, a ballooning welfare state, crippling student loan debt, insane medical regulations, tariffs, massive social funding to disrupt natural gender roles, legal destruction of families, etc., we are going to blame immigrants and ignore these socialist programs. Immigration restriction, just like in the past of Prohibition, is a fucking red herring. Everyone concerned about border regulations and mass deportations is an NPC. You're an audience member participating in a magic show, thinking the hot girl really did disappear in the box, and you're ignoring the actual problems we're facing in this country. Harkening back to our earlier little history lesson, let me say this simply. Prohibition never works. It is a Band-Aid on an infected wound and only appears to solve problems. The fact is that the only thing prohibition and government regulations do is give more power and money to the government and worsen the living conditions of us all. The drug war hasn't stopped fentanyl fiends from leaning into right angles on Skid Row or in small town Appalachia. And immigration restriction has done little to curb immigration now. Trump hasn't even managed to deport 1 million immigrants in this country, and he's cucked out the corporate interests like big agriculture and hospitality industry. The dream of deporting all the immigrants could only be realized by a totalitarian state that is willing to commit genocide. Since the Reagan administration, we have had millions of illegal immigrants pouring in each year, and every enforcement measure is a drop in the bucket, causing at best temporary dips in new immigrants that only wait a few years. But maybe you're sitting there thinking all my black pilling is true. What the fuck am I supposed to do? I used to live in this nice town, and now there are areas I can't take my kids. Places that felt like home are now run by foreigners. My kids are trying to get a job, but they're evaporating, and I see people who shouldn't even be here, who refuse to assimilate, taking those very jobs. And when I log online, I see another case of some judge letting some illegal off for the 10th time before he murders and rapes some poor girl. At least Trump is doing something. That intuition, that experience is real, and I'm not denying that. But you have pointed the finger at the man next to you instead of the parasites in government that are causing this. These immigrants aren't here because our border wall isn't tall enough, or we don't have enough drones. They're here because your socialist government invited them. The Republicans, the Democrats, the CEOs, the NGOs are all writing checks to these people with your fucking money. And some are promising that afterwards they'll deport the bad ones. But these pesky Democrats are in their way, so they need your vote in November so they can do absolutely fucking nothing. People respond to incentives, and government control of people are some of the most expensive and least effective incentives. As with prohibition, it only causes crime to skyrocket, empowers cartels and coyotes, and the massive increases to the welfare state has only caused massive income increases in fraud. And watch, they'll ask for more power to combat the fraud instead of one simple solution. Cut off the money. That's it. That's the solution. Stop writing the damn checks. Over 53% of immigrant-led households are on some form of welfare, 59% of non-citizen-headed households, and roughly 61% of illegal-led households are on welfare. The increase of socialist welfare policies are funding the worst immigrants at the expense of Americans. Chain migration policies, public schools and housing, NGOs funded by the state waive their legal fees while we fund both the courts and the immigrants they keep taking in. The people in power are buying multi-generational voters, cheap labor, and scapegoats, so you don't focus on how the magician is fucking you. I'll end this with another little history lesson. Remember those pesky immigrants that needed to be controlled with prohibition because the socialist progressives were funding public works and railroad construction outside the market demand and then blamed them for everyone's problems? They were the Ellis Island wave of immigrants from roughly 1880 to 1924. Only about 2% of them were ever turned away. Even though we often did house them and gave them jobs, we made them work, and we didn't give them million-dollar daycare clinics. We let people deny them jobs. The effect of this was nearly half of Irish and Italian immigrants and about 20% of Southern and Eastern immigrants remigrated. In the early years of the immigration, roughly half of these settled in the Midwest and West. Unviable immigrants left because we properly discriminated against them. We didn't give them handouts. And more would have left if prohibition didn't drive them into speakeasies, crime syndicates, and moonshining. Immigration restriction is a red herring designed by those in power to continue to steal your wages and opportunities and sell you a solution they never planned to commit to.
Yeah, that was 6 minutes, 30 seconds. All right, let's, whenever you're ready, Mid Temple.
Well, since I got more time.
Yeah, you go ahead, Mid Temple. You ready? Yeah, I mean,
He's server muted.
I know. I'm just. I got you. It was on purpose.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There we go. Well, I'll start off. I'm going to keep this really simple. This won't take 7 minutes. Fabian knows my debate style very well, which is none at all. So to quick respond, you listed a lot of things in there saying that immigration is a red herring from those issues, and that can be true in general political discussions. But you're definitely the one who's introducing red herrings when we're having a debate on immigration, and you're suggesting that all of these other issues are more important. They aren't for this discussion. So that was a red herring, if anything. I would retort. I agreed with some of what you said. Like, the reason that these immigrants came is that they were invited, right? I don't blame the immigrants themselves for what's happening. They were invited. Our government went down and assured them that they can benefit it from making it to our borders. The cartels have monetary interest, financial interest in this operation. This is not something that just happened naturally, where people just all on their own decided to go up north. Like, there was a political narrative that they were getting. And so I do agree with you. I think that had they not been invited and not welcomed in, a wall would have worked. Had we actually obstructed their ability to come, they probably wouldn't have even bothered trying. But the reason they came is because they knew they would make it in. All right, so here's my specific open. And I'll keep it really, really clear because we have a very clear prompt for you guys to judge based off of. border restrictions threaten American liberty, property rights, and economic prosperity. That's the topic. Obviously, Fabian agrees with that premise, but I'm actually going to take a stronger than negative position here and say border restrictions protect these things. Border restrictions are the reason we have these things. First, we'll talk about liberty. There is no self-governance without a self. And a nation that fails to define itself it's already lost its ability to enforce any sort of liberty. You're nullifying laws that self-governant system passed. And so that is a violation of liberty right there. By not enforcing the border, that would be a violation of liberty. When it comes to property rights are defined by the ability to exclude. And this disconnect between the individual property right and our collective property right, they're different systems and they operate differently, but they have the same underlying principles. When you don't enforce border restrictions, those costs and that influence is borne by individuals. There's people that live all along the border that have regularly incurred costs from damage to their properties, like the cartels trafficking drugs through their properties, damaging fences and other, things that they've put up personally. Your property rights individually might not be affected, up in a northern state if you're not directly, but you're passing off that burden to individuals. You just maybe don't know them. And then economic prosperity. I mean, everyone loves to reference that, the more immigrants we have, the higher GDP and stuff, which is just obviously true in any simulation. If you increase the population, that'll increase the GDP, but it fails us when you account for remittances. When you account for how much money is sent back overseas, when you talk about job loss, job opportunity loss, these things, their access to welfare programs, whether it's legal or illegal, they're certainly getting some access. When you look at emergency rooms is a common example. So enforcing border restrictions, I think, is required to protect these things. So it's not that it doesn't. I'm taking a very strong opposition here. It's not only that it doesn't threaten them. We need it to protect these interests. I think the issue that I take with your position primarily is that you treat these things like liberty, property rights, economic prosperity as some natural resource that we accidentally discovered. These are things that were built over the last 250 years by Americans, whether it was through the Civil War, whether it was through the Revolution, whether it was through the Civil Rights Act. Everything in our system can be traced back to a people who fought for something. So these aren't unlimited resources. They're not natural resources. The idea that anyone can come take advantage of the American dream. The American dream is a limited resource. It's not an infinite resource that we can just pass out to everyone. It's made up of the opportunities that are provided to us. It's made up of the job access that we have. It's made up of those social programs that we should generally have that help people when they fall down and get down. I'm not inherently against all welfare programs. I just think that the amount of abuse and sort of the vicious cycle that people get sucked into, where it's really hard to get out, and it's not even necessarily their fault. People get sucked into it. They'll build a life based on that, government disability or whatever it is. And then when they try to get out, all of a sudden that's pulled from them. And so there's a system that traps people into this. But ultimately, my position is that without border restrictions, we couldn't have any of these. How do you have a property rights if anyone can come into the country? The country's property rights are just as real as your individual property rights. They obviously operate differently, and they're not as concrete in front of you, because when someone invades your individual property rights, that's much more real than some vague national border rights, but they do operate the same way. So I'll leave it at that. That's my open.
Oh, for being so much shorter, it was only 30 seconds shorter. So all right, we're gonna open now. Yeah, wow. All right, now we're gonna open it up. Y'all can fight. Judges, we're gonna come to y'all in about 10-15 minutes or so. Then we'll have some questions.
Use a bitch ass boy. Well, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No,
so
we can, mitigate those.
First, let's you said that you accused me of engaging in red herrings, right? And I think for the
I
opening
retorted that
statements-
when you bring up red herrings, I think you're the one who's introducing red herrings by bringing all of the. We're having a debate on immigration, so in general, I can agree with you. This could be a red herring in a general political debate if we're talking about like, what's the most important issues facing us. But
so let me
okay.
actually continue before you interrupt me, other than just re-explaining your intro statement, right? So when you accuse me of red herrings, right? Let me weave this thread. I do not believe that they're red herring. Maybe you do, or maybe it's just like a general retort. But what I would say is that I'm talking about when people talk about immigration, you yourself admit, you say, look, I don't blame these individual people, right? So you're not actually talking about the process of immigration. That's not your issue, right? The process of an individual crossing a border is not the thing that makes you go, ooh, this is a problem. What you're talking about is rising home prices. What you're talking about is, labor. You're talking about the inability to afford a home. You're talking about all of those things that I mentioned, and you have attached those to our immigration policy, or at the very least to the, tens of millions of illegal or undocumented migrants. So it's not a red herring when I say that I think that you've wrongly attached those things. And that instead of focusing on all of the things that would actually solve this and the things that are causing that incentive structure of that migration, that by people focusing on stricter border restrictions and by focusing on deportation, that they have actually missed the forest for the trees, that they have focused in on this distraction that the state has put forward, which is that what will solve this is if we get rid of the migrants, but they're not actually solving what brought the migrants here. They're not actually solving why they keep coming. And the fact of the matter is, we could spend infinite money and we're still going to have black markets. And that is why I brought up a historical example of prohibition, is because that when the state tries to really deeply control people's behavior on a mass scale, what often ends up happening is the government gains power. Their government gets more corrupt, crime increases, problems increase, because we have just driven this thing into a more black market space, which is kind of like where we're at now, and it's worsening, and we're not actually addressing the problems.
Well, I can concede that there's tons of variables that can affect an issue like housing prices. And if we were talking about housing prices, there's certainly other things that have nothing to do with immigration that affect that. But what I'm going to challenge you on is you certainly wouldn't suggest that immigration has no impact. Legal and illegal immigration both affect population, and population certainly has to do with housing costs, right? Like if there's
I would reject
20,000 more people in a given area, that's going to increase.
I would reject the concept that a free market actually causes this problem. Right. The reason we have a housing problem is because we have public housing programs where we're housing immigrants in places that are already purchased. The reason we have a housing problem is because of government regulation. The reason we have a housing cost problem is because of quantitative easing, because of supposedly capitalistic market of private equity and finance that is so deeply embedded. Like this is not a free market system. Under a free market system, we pull back those regulations and we allow and we don't give welfare or public housing to these people, then we can allow an actual supply and demand equation to occur. Because if you get rid of all the immigrants, right, you do increase the housing supply relative to the people in the country, which in theory would, at least in the short term, would reduce the cost of housing. But the problem is that you've also gotten rid of some people who build houses. You've also gotten rid of some people that may live in multifamily
people
homes,
who are illegally
right?
building houses. So I would retort that that's a job that
illegally
is
like not a is like a
demand
magic
for something
word
to be
that
built,
doesn't really
it will be
matter to me,
built.
right? Like just being like, but it's illegal. It's just like there's no moral
No,
argument to that.
you're suggesting that by removing that illegal, the job wouldn't be completed. What I'm saying is that job being done by an illegally, there's still the demand for whatever house he's building to be built, right? Are obviously going to have to pay more for an American to do that, but that's what I'm asking for is
I'm saying
for
is
you
like,
to
let's
meet
say
the
we have-
market rate.
Let's say we have 400 million people in the U.S., right? And 10% of them are like, I know it's like last census was like 340 something, right? But let's just pretend for easy math, 400 million, right? And then let's say 10% of all people are illegal immigrants. And let's say we can push a magic button and like those 10% just immediately disappear. No cost to us, right? So this is like the perfect scenario, right? The government doesn't need more power. The government doesn't need more of your taxes to get rid of these people, even though it does, right? But in a perfect scenario, what we've done is in the immediacy, we have a certain amount of homes, right? And so in the immediacy, we will obviously lower the cost of housing. But in a perfectly free market, that is going to that's eventually going to just pan back into a normal place, because we've also gotten rid of 10 million people that would potentially buy or rent
Right.
homes, right? So it doesn't actually have a meaningful impact on it. Now, if let's say the immigrant population was predominantly working in construction, and if we had, let's say, a labor shortage, right, to meet demand, because I don't know, Americans that are, citizen born are more likely to work in things like corporate America or the service industry, then the long-term effect would be increased housing. And I think that the latter example is likely true, is that you're talking about a population that is more invested in terms of the labor market in construction. And so, but again, maybe construction then pays more, right? And corporate jobs pay less. So some people end up switching from corporate jobs into the construction industry. Like, it does eventually pan out. What I'm saying is that the price mechanism, it's a Band-Aid. It works for like a couple years, because if you get rid of a bunch of people, you have houses that are already built, and you've reduced the overall population. So therefore houses get cheaper. But if you don't actually address any of the underlying problems, the supply demand equation, right? Like the price eventually levels out again, and you're in the exact same place you started, except you spent a bunch of money getting rid of a bunch of people. You haven't actually fixed anything.
Well, I don't know that I totally followed all of that, but I understand there would be an effect when you immediately solve a problem, because we're correcting a system that was, being built with this influence in the system,
government
being
solves
illegals and their
problems. It's just
population
straight
and what
up.
they're spending. I understand that. Like I know that they don't spend $0 and that they're paying sales taxes and stuff like that, and that we would see an effect. But
A lot of them
ultimately,
are working under fucking false Social Security numbers, so they're paying federal income tax
true.
and Social Security tax
But
and Medicare. And
I
Medicaid
don't-
too.
I don't concede that the reason that illegals are predominantly working in jobs like construction and manual labor is purely because of a desire to do that. I think it's because it's very poorly regulated. It's an easier job. It's much easier to hire someone to work on a construction site illegally than it is to hire somebody at a Wendy's illegally. So I think that people are drawn to the opportunity, and there's a serious
But I already admitted.
financial.
Hold on, pause. I already admitted that over time the supply and demand equation would likely balance itself out as
Sure, but
white Americans would move out of corporate America into construction, because there would be a labor shortage, so they'd spend more money. They'd say like wages would increase in construction, people would move from one job market to the other, like that would balance out, right? It doesn't take like
Right.
20 years experience to do most construction jobs. You can learn an apprentice in 6 months to a year, and you pretty much know what's going on. So that's a moot point. What I'm saying is that the overall impact of reducing the total population has an immediate effect on housing prices, but that the supply and demand equation eventually evens out, and that when what you see is you see people link immigration as if immigration is what's causing housing to be an issue, and it's not. That's my argument, is that it's not having a negative
Population
impact
growth
on
is
housing.
right. Unregulated population growth is going to affect that.
Unregulated population growth? Are you a fucking genocidal Malthusian? What do you mean?
What?
Have
No,
more
I'm-
babies, people. Don't listen to Pentuple, all right?
No, I'm
Birth rates are low.
I'm not against
Fucking
population
stop.
growth, but I'm just saying that like
But
when you have
unregulated
unregulated
population growth.
illegal immigration would be unregulated.
Right,
There's we've reached the amount of illegals that we're bringing in, and now we're going to stop them. It's illegal. It's been illegal. It's illegal from the start.
I mean, what's the significant difference between, like, if you say we ought restrict people coming in, right? Like, what is the argument for it, right? Because the arguments that I heard from it, and correct me if I'm wrong, from your opening statement, right, is that we have an identity as a nation of laws,
Yes.
and that by breaking those laws, we lose our identity, and therefore we lose liberty. because liberty is not like a real quote unquote natural resource, though I don't treat it that way. And you said it is a limited resource, that there's only so much liberty that can go around. Maybe that's why you believe in keeping the population low, because once the population gets too high, we'll lose too much liberty. But it's a limited resource, right? And that we're a nation of law. So by virtue of breaking whatever law our corrupt government officials come up with, we've lost liberty. Can you dig into
immigration
that?
laws weren't cooked up in the back rooms. These are things that people have demanded throughout American history. I mean, there's
what does that have to do
how
with
many
liberty,
times have we
though,
passed
right?
an immigration act? I'm just saying what it has to do with liberty is that when you're a population that governs itself, what is that self? And that self is Americans. It's made up of Americans. And when you open that pool to say anybody who comes here is an honorary American and they're entitled to that, there's really no definite self that is governing you. It's just
Right, but
it is the government.
I wouldn't make the argument that you're an honorary American just because you cross a fucking pretend border.
Well, I'm just saying in practice, the way that they are incorporated into our society, they're not a citizen, but you're in favor of allowing them to continue working and living here. That's what I mean by honorary American.
I want to disassociate myself with maybe left-wing libertarians or left-wing people that are open borders, right? The way that I view an American or an Englishman or a Polishman, whatever it may be, is a Bayesian inference, right? Like I reject this magic soil theory that like the moment you're Bayesian is like it's like grabbing a group of characteristics and right, because like when people say what is a woman, and then they'd be like, well, a woman has children, be like, well, then are infertile women not women because they can't have children? But it's like, no, it's a Bayesian inference. It's a whole bunch of things: secondary sexual characteristics, the ability to have children, the role they fill in society, the fact that they have 2 X chromosomes. It's a whole bunch of things. And sometimes people in the category are outliers that miss one thing, right? And so what I'm saying is that what is an American isn't a Bayesian inference. It's how many generations have you been here? It is in part racial. It is in part your legal status. It is in part how much you contribute. It is in part how much you are ingratiated to the culture. All of these things are what make an American.
Are you a citizen?
Yeah. Well, hold on.
Well, no, I find that to be bullshit. I think a Somalian that gets citizenship isn't just magically American.
Well, let's go get into that some more in a second. Let's go to the judges now. I'm sure a lot of them are very excited about that dissertation on Bayesian. So we're going to go start with Tomato. I think she looks excited.
We asked.
Somebody else. Yeah, go ahead, Tomato. You got something for us? You got a question, Chad?
I kind of, I know I know we're all within the prompt, but I also feel like we're not really speaking as much to the prompt. We're going in kind of other different directions, right? And so it kind of captures what Fabian is saying, but it also captures what Pentemple is saying. Like Fabian's saying all of these other things are important, and while Pentemple's saying, yeah, that's important, but that's outside of like what we're talking about. And I guess I'm looking for maybe a little more. I'm not sure what kind of clarity I'm looking for, but I'm looking for it somewhere. So I'm gonna just keep listening, and I'm gonna look for my answers for now. But you guys are doing great. It's a great conversation.
I have a lot of questions. So.
I can direct that, right? I can.
Yeah, that's fine. If she wants to wait, we can go. If he's got a lot of questions, let's go ahead.
Go ahead.
A lot of questions.
Sorry, me?
Yeah,
Yes.
you. Yeah.
My name's Hunter. So this is gonna be for both of you guys. Just really curious just to frame the conversation. Well, first off, actually, Fabian gets points off for confusing Bayesian inference with linguistic prototype theory, but that's fine. We can move forward past that. This is for both of you guys. What specifically are your policy prescriptions? So, Fabian, would you advocate for like a completely open border where all we have to do is just register who's coming in and there's like no barrier or we're not turning anyone away? Like, what sort of filtering process would there be? And also to Pentuple, what would your policy prescription be? Do you think we can be as aggressive as we want to be towards the people attempting to come into the country? That seems like you answered that question. That like
just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. That is not my answer.
There were some. Obviously, there were some. I forget it. I think it was Greg Abbott who advocated for putting in barbed wire into the rivers.
They were the orange balls of death, and they're not as bad as people made it out to be.
Sorry, are you part of the conversation, Gibbs?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's a question about you guys.
Whoever
What would you
muted him.
advocate for specifically policy wise? Like what specifically are we looking for?
I'll go first on that. So, like, my realistic answer is just I would like the immigration laws as written currently enforced. I don't believe that that's happening.
And they shouldn't be changed. You're okay with how they are?
Right.
Okay.
What I would want, like, to give you a more realistic answer of where I stand, I would want a small limit on invited legal immigration. So it's not an entitlement that people can come claim. It's like, you've been invited. It's a marriage visa, certain work visas, entertainers and stuff like that. Fine with that. I would like to see more self-deportations. And I think the way that would be achieved is by just simply cutting off their access to any sort of support programs, cutting off their access to employment. I think that would just they would go back to their home country, which is ultimately what I desire. I don't have some sort of I understand why these people came, and if I was in their shoes, I would come too. But I do want to see the people who are here illegally return to their home country. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be through forceful deportations or through ICE or whatever.
Sure.
But I just want our current border to be enforced as written and strongly.
Okay.
And that's
sure. Fabian, your answer to policy prescription?
Primarily magic button, complete dissolution of the state. Without
sure.
that, gradual to the greatest ability that I can, gradual lack of enforcement of the border and massive defunding of all social welfare programs.
Sure. This will lead into another question that I have, so I'm just going to read it as I wrote it. We talked a lot about supply and demand in terms of housing. So I think you would concede that zoning regulations are restricting supply, and that's part of the reason as to why housing is so expensive. You also mentioned other factors like quantitative easing. If you're president and unable to fix the housing supply for whatever reason, so that the supply is still artificially restricted because of local regulations, also if you reject this framing, then for whatever reason you're unable to touch the housing issues at all, would you still advocate for open borders knowing that this would create an increase of cost of rent?
Yes.
Okay.
So here's the thing I think that's important distinction to make here, right? Which is, when I'm working in a libertarian framework with, the concept of what we ought support and what we ought not support, right? Obviously, you can't push a magic button and get anarchy the next day. And so the real question is actually understanding that we are in a philosophical war. And that these ideas of these tit-tat back and forth policies are really kind of like minor things in this cliff that we're diving off of with our debt and all of our issues. And so the main question that I ask about any specific policy is this policy motivated by the false belief that government solves problems? Or is this policy motivated by the philosophical belief that government intervention has caused problems? And so that is kind of with limited power, because even a president, obviously, as you noted, has limited power.
Right.
With limited power, the policies that I would support would be those that philosophically recognize that government intervention is exacerbating the problem in some degree. Because, if you open the borders, but all of these other housing regulations are a problem, well, they cause rent to increase. Maybe we keep preaching that the reason the rent is increasing is not the open borders, but is the fact that their local Californian esque, mayor has all of these NIMBY laws that are keeping us from building houses.
Cool. Okay. I still have questions. Gibbs, why don't you just cut me off when we're done with the Q&A? Because
I also have a question for Fabian.
Sure,
Well,
but
you
that's
have
not the
way-
fucking part of the debate, is it? Okay, the debate. The part of the debate is with. Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Fabian. You get a little bit of points off for dick sucking, but I do appreciate it nonetheless.
Whoa. Do I get a lot of
Whatever.
points for dick sucking? After Ben goes, I do have a question.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. Yeah, I got.
I am entitled to no points.
All right, Hunter, if you got another one.
Yeah. I've got. So, where do we want to go? Okay. Most economists recognize that deporting 15 million people. So this is to Pindouble. Is that how you want me to refer to you?
Yeah. That's good.
Okay, cool.
That's fine.
Most economists recognize that deporting 15 million people could be disastrous for our economy, as most businesses could collapse with the heavy disappearance of supply and demand and the velocity of money. Are these economists mistaken, lying, or is this a cost you acknowledge but you believe is worth taking on?
Probably sort of in the middle, but mostly the second one. Mostly I would just be willing to bear the cost. But ultimately, what I fail with is there is a serious like financial and money interest in these immigrants being here when you talk about big business, especially like big business with manual labor. I absolutely understand that there would be a chaotic outcome, I guess, if we were to do, some very swift removal of 15 million people. I don't think that's the optimal way to solve the problem, right? It's not always necessarily better to be faster. I think there's also consequences to being too slow if we do nothing, but I'm not necessarily trying to solve this problem as fast as I can. And I understand those concerns, but generally speaking, those concerns like, businesses who have employees that are here illegally, they're going to have to hire Americans, and Americans aren't going to work for those lower wages because they need to survive in the American economy. They're not sending money back to, a third world country where it goes much farther. So I can concede and recognize those issues, and those would be very relevant if I were, the president, or if I were in charge. I wouldn't, be so bullheaded that I want just the fastest solution. I would want an optimal solution. I think an optimal solution requires that you do things more slowly, but those costs, some of them maybe we might be willing to bear some and not others, if that makes sense. I haven't really sat down, and obviously that would be a whole process if you and I were the president and vice president trying to solve this. But generally speaking, I would be willing to bear those costs and that chaos because I do want to ultimately put us in a position where America is for Americans. We are self-governing. We have a defined self, and that self is American citizens. And,
well, let's just hold on. I hear Fabian.
Can I ask a question, quickly? Do you believe?
No.
Oh, no. You didn't ask.
How long?
We're going to
You ain't going to go on for the whole debate.
I have questions for you. I haven't gotten to yet.
Don't worry. We got a whole full. I got a timer. Relax. We're like in 7 minutes.
All right.
Balderson, go ahead.
So I kind of have the flip side of the same question for both of you. I want to start with Fabian. Do you think that what would you do? You laid out that government does not fix things, but you have to admit that if we open the borders, it's going to flood with people. Fine. What are we gonna do to stem the people that are willing to pay those people lower wages, and they will take those lower wages?
Awesome.
And shifting the economy.
I would do nothing. I would celebrate. I would celebrate that there are all of these jobs, right? Because like minimum wage in a job market is death to an economy, right? Like if there are people that are willing to work for less money to do a job that Americans won't do for whatever reason, and they're willing to do that, that's great. The problem is not that there are these I see, like it's something Pentuple said, right? He said these people are, Americans are having to survive in the American economy, and then they're sending money back over. And I think he's pointed out something that is really actually a really strong argument for what I'm talking about, which is how in the fuck are the immigrants living in America in a separate economy than the Americans? And the answer is because they're heavily subsidized by the state, right? That's why they live in a separate economy. That's why they're willing to get, that's why they're willing to
15 of them in a house. I don't know if you're aware of this.
I'm aware that like certain immigrant families, right, like pack in, right?
Yeah,
that's yes,
a lot of workers. A lot of these. There's like 15 male workers.
So they no longer live in the American economy because a bunch of them
they're sending remittances, and the money goes much farther over there. That's why they're willing to work.
That means they have extra money to send out. That means they're not only surviving the American economy, they're doing more than surviving because they have extra money to send out of the American economy. What I'm saying is very simple, which is if
they're not,
I don't care if
car insurance.
Well, hold on, let me answer the question.
Right?
Yeah, let me answer.
You're
the
just
question.
wrong.
I'm
Well, you
completely
know,
You're
it's
presenting it like
But
like these
just let
illegals
him
live
answer.
in just like another apartment next door.
Well, hold on.
They
Just let him
do,
answer, and
quite
you can answer
literally.
the question, Temple. Go ahead. Finish
They
that up.
do
Finish that
quite
up.
literally live in an apartment next door. Like,
Yeah, like 10
like,
of them.
All right. Well, let him finish. Let
They're
him
not
finish.
paying the same rent. They're not
finish.
paying health insurance. They're not buying. They're
God
not
damn it.
doing all of these
Alright,
things that we do that we demand higher pay for.
Right, where's the mouse?
Right. They are making
Okay,
different choices in the economy because they are willing to do different things. I do not care if an immigrant is willing to do a job for
How bad it is
$10 an
where
hour.
they came from.
Okay, yeah,
Think
I
about
get
that.
that.
Just wait.
I
Don't
get
worry
that you're just trying to be like, but the dirty immigrants that sleep on the floors, ew. But it's not an argument. It's not an argument. So to answer the question that was foisted to me, I wouldn't do anything to try and stem the tide of businesses paying low wages to low skill immigrant labor. I don't care. In fact, that's productive to the economy if they're willing to do it. What we need to fix is the fact that we subsidize low skill, low wage labor and fuck over American wages with things like food stamps, with things like temporary assistance for needy families, with things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, with all of these welfare programs allow businesses to pay under the market value for the labor. And especially this is true with immigrants that are far more likely to be on welfare than American citizens. So you're having money stolen out of your paycheck to subsidize those low wages. In a completely free market, if someone's willing to do a bullshit job for low wages, then that's just economic activity. That's good for everybody. But if they're subsidized by your money, that's the problem. And that's
you're
what I would focus on fixing.
Let me respond to that. You're subjecting the American
I didn't get to
economy.
respond to any of your shit. So,
Oh
Just
my
go ahead.
God.
Well, he did ask both of y'all to answer the question. You can answer the question, and then we're going.
Yeah, that's
We haven't even asked Pentuple his part of the question yet because they're kind of flip sides
Go
of the
ahead.
coin.
If you answer the question, Temple, you answer. You can say.
All right, let me write it down so I don't forget.
I have
Go
not.
ahead, go ahead, Bowser. Go ahead. Well, this way. That's on him.
So basically, and then this is still Fabian. So basically, rather than exporting all of our jobs to third world countries, we're going to bring the third world country here.
yeah, I mean, if that's how you want to define it, bring the third world country here. What I'm saying is that we've brought the third world here. We did it with Irish when they came over. We did it with Italians essentially when they came here. And most of them went back home because we didn't subsidize the third world here. So when you say bring the third world here, I don't know. No, right.
I think I can bring some clarity.
So the problem here is that we have to make it to where people that don't make enough money to survive in our economy are unviable and they fucking starve unless they go back home. Okay, we stop giving them free shit when they don't speak our language, when they don't assimilate to our culture. We stop giving them free shit so that they can continue to be the third world. Because some of the people in the third world are high IQ, hardworking, great people that we fucking want here. And some of those people are fucking knuckle dragging retards from a barbaric culture. And the people that are knuckle dragging retards from a barbaric culture, we're paying. We're paying them. We're giving them money. That's who's doing it. It's the fucking Democrats and Republicans right now that are importing the third world. We have to stop importing them, and having drones and a bunch more millions of your tax dollars at the southern border doesn't actually fix that problem. It just empowers the cartels to bring more fucked up drugs and kill more people here.
All right, let's go. Hold on.
The inflow of immigrants has gone down.
Hold on.
That's objectively true. How am I not allowed to respond to this? Well, we're debating.
You gotta wait.
I mean, I can't even put my thoughts on the record.
We are in the judges' period.
How are you supposed to judge this debate if we can't even both get on the record on the subject?
You are going to get on the record. You
literally are going to directly respond to Fabian. It'll be some of the most valuable input for the judges to see.
You will get a chance. You will get a chance.
No, I'm going to forget, and you're going to. This is not
write it down. That's your fault. All right. Go ahead, Bowser. You have a question?
And for Pentuple, what would you do to remedy the problems that the mass deportation are going to cause, destroying an already fragile supply chain with cost increases?
Well, I guess it depends if you're asking me if we go through mass forced deportations or we encourage mass self deportations, because self deportations would happen as naturally as they came in. right? So like the economic impact would be not as, I guess, like objective maybe. Like I understand what you're saying. Like if we just deported 15 million people, if it's a low end estimate in my opinion, but
I agree.
Didn't we have 10 million just during Biden's term? 15, I doubt it.
I worked on the
But
census.
I
Trust
understand.
me, it's
I
way higher.
understand, and I would just reiterate, my interest in solving this problem is not that it has to be solved as quickly as possible. It's that what are the principles that we should be implementing on this, and how do we get to a world where the consequences of failing those principles, like we live in today, how do we phase out of it? And I think it takes a serious approach, and I don't think it can go too slowly either. I do think there needs to be some urgency to get there. But if I were the president and they were putting this plan in front of me and said, "Look, just sign this bill, and we're going to go out and like deport everyone as fast as we can," I would be willing to concede that that's not the best approach. So
even if they with self-deportations, because let's say a law
well,
was
self-deportations would happen slowly, and it would be, it would depend on the individual circumstances.
I
Like
would
it
still
wouldn't
wanna
be.
know how we're gonna fix that break in the supply chain, and as American workers are filling these spots, we understand that the $5 an hour Mexican and the $20 an hour American, that's going to create a substantial cost increase and put a
Yes.
large break in the supply chains.
Yes. I would accept that, because that's where we would be had we not had these issues in the first place. Those wages, like $20 or whatever, if that's the fair wage to legally hire somebody, I do want somebody getting paid that. I want them to be forced to hire somebody at that wage, and they probably will raise prices, but ultimately I'm willing to accept that because I want to get to a system where this wouldn't have been there in the first place. So it's easier to say, oh, here's the benefits economically of having lower wages, right? Like this is what Fabian's sort of getting at. There isn't a recognizable economic advantage if you're just looking at prices of goods and you're looking at the wages that we're paying these workers. But I'm saying if we had never made this mistake of failing to enforce our immigration laws, we wouldn't even know what that benefit was. Obviously, we can see what it is now, and it's great for those who are, when you're spending lower prices, but I don't think it's worth all of the residual effects that we're having in the country, whether it's crime, housing, all of the other, downstream things. So I guess I would just say that we would see a price increase, and that's to the point that these people undercut American wages. We would see price increases, and those prices would actually be going to American workers, not getting sent out in remittances. And what I wanted to press Fabian on here is that I think that we actually share a general economic view of this, but your interest is much more in the global economy. Because if I was thinking just global economy, I understand what you're saying.
Before we go back and forth, you can press it. But hold on, what we're going to do, Sarah, you don't get to ask a question. We've run out of time for the judges period. We're going to get you to go first next time. But go ahead if you're going to continue. I'm going to get back to the table if you want to press it.
It's okay. I'm gonna pass now. I'm getting more stuffs and it's working for me. So
all right,
go ahead.
Cool. We're gonna come to you first then next time. Go ahead, Pit Devil. You were talking, and then it's open.
So,
find each other.
Like the economic principles, I understand. Like when you're looking at a global economy, if someone's willing to work for less, that's fine. But I am exclusively identifying the American economy, and my biggest issue with embracing the global economy has to do in large part, and this is a part of the immigration issue. It's a little bit derivative, but birth rates. And I know we mentioned that earlier because there is a relevance here. In third world countries and poorer countries, you have much higher birth rates than developed Western countries. As a country develops, the birth rate goes down. So when we accept immigrants from these third world countries, it's essentially an infinite source of immigrants that we can take in because their birth rates are so much higher, and it takes several generations once they get here for their birth rates to match ours. So the immigration issue could even just be a numbers game. The amount of people that are, use a video game term, being spawned into reality in these places is 4 times higher than it is where we live. And so I'm defining the American economy, and certainly there's benefits to engaging with the global economy. I'm not an isolationist, but there's also consequences to it. And when you're talking about human labor and those sort of things, if we open the doors, these sources of humans, just being other countries, there's essentially an infinite source. They're not. If we want to really help the global economy, we need to help them modernize so that they're not as desperate to come here, because that's what will get their birth rates down. That's what will help them benefit from the similar things that we benefit from here. I feel like and this is why I went to earlier, that like these aren't unlimited resources. We're giving the American dream away, kind of like a cashier at a pizza restaurant might give pizza away to his friends. He's not the owner, he's just the cashier. He doesn't understand that there's a finite amount of pizza because there's always pizza available. But the owner, seeing that, would understand and recognize there is a real loss and cost here. It might feel like, such at scale, just so large it doesn't matter, but it does matter. And my focus is primarily on Americans, and I just define that as an American citizen. I'm not necessarily interested, and obviously I want people to embrace American culture. I want people to assimilate, but ultimately it is simply a binary. You're either here and you're a citizen, or you're here illegally. And I'm not making some sort of race-based or any other analysis than that. And it's a very objective one. You either are or you aren't. There's not really there's no gray area in that binary.
Okay, you're on a little bit of a. Let me address. You made like a lot of claims there, right? So first and foremost, this stems from an economic misunderstanding that you made earlier, like as you transitioned into this, which is you said that is the wage, right? But when you were talking about an American being paid $20 an hour, right? And then you admitted that prices would go up. But like we've seen economic isolationism or nationalism, in the 20th century and what it does to economies before. We saw this in fascist Italy. We saw this in countries where they really tried to close off their borders and maintain, their sense of identity. And I'm not calling you a fascist, right? I'm just simply saying we've seen this concept of, the labor ought be the German man, or the labor ought be the Italian man, and that like this import of labor will destroy the economy. And we watched it play out, and the exact opposite happened, right? Which was that when you restricted labor to an extreme degree towards the native population, prices went up, and it caused serious economic problems, to the point where Mussolini had to put in a libertarian to run his, a libertarian that was also a white supremacist, but a libertarian economically in one domain, right? And he put him in charge, and he got rid of rent controls, and he got rid of a lot of the export taxes on foreign goods, and he was allowing some foreign labor in, and then the economy did better, and then he got rid of them, and he put an isolationist in, and then the economy got worse again. So it's not the real wage. What it is it's an artificially manipulated labor market by the U.S. government. When the U.S. government says we're going to restrict people from coming into this country and participating in the labor market, right? That is illegally. In and of itself, and it's not about you. Just keep using illegal.
No, it is. I didn't say you couldn't legally
you're
hire
passing it like
workers.
A spell for retards. It doesn't matter. Like if you're restricting the amount of legal immigration, right? Then it doesn't matter. You're restricting the labor market. Okay, but
if you're legally here and you're legally working,
unlimited
you can
legal
continue
immigration
to legally work.
Are you in support of unlimited legal immigration?
No way.
Okay, well then then the distinction between illegal and legal here makes no difference, and it's just a magic word you're using. You're not actually addressing the argument.
You're muddying the waters, because I'm not talking. I'm
not muddying the waters. You are by just keeping saying
you can
illegally
legally
like
hire people who aren't American citizens, but you have to do it legally. That's all I'm saying. And I'm saying when you allow people to break the laws in hiring, the reason they're doing that is because it obviously comes with a lower cost. So when you take that away, they don't have that benefit. I understand that there is a
talking about
benefit.
population. No, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You were talking about population control and restricting immigration in the hopes that we don't have this unlimited sieve of a border that just lets in new people as they continue to breed. What you were talking about is government regulation of the amount of supply in the labor market, increasing prices. You're talking about making every American's life more expensive. And you're talking about that you're saying that is a price you're willing to pay, is to make people pay more money at the grocery store and make the houses more expensive because we got rid of the people coming in that don't necessarily mesh with our values, et cetera. And what I'm talking about is stop paying people to come so that unlimited, as you say, which is just not true, right? In a few generations, like every estimate shows that like populations are going to level off, and like the birth rate problem is going to be a problem worldwide, and like that is an entirely different like climate issue, plastics issue, medicine issue, wherever that, whatever socialism that may be making people's lives harder, whatever you may blame on birth control things. My argument would be that it's actually, as a society becomes more controlling and more socialist, is when you see population decline, because the most socialist countries have had some of the worst birth rates. But nevertheless, whatever you blame it on, that's a world thing. But even if we assume that this continues, you were talking about artificially restricting the supply in the labor market, increasing prices for Americans.
I'm talking about getting rid of the element that is currently depressing those wages. And there's a reason that businesses want to continue saving that money on that labor, because it does keep those costs down. If we had had our immigration laws as written and we had never had an issue and there were no people here illegally, we would
always have an issue.
A $20 American, just for the purposes of this example. And what I'm saying is, it's easy to look at that and say, oh, well, here's what the cost would be if we just had taken advantage of this.
And we would have a $20 American job, right? And then
that would just be what the market rate was for it.
Right. And then construction costs would increase. And then homes, instead of
they're increasing. They're increasing because we got rid of.
We're not doing this. And then instead of, I'm going to finish this line of thought. And then instead of having the first time home buyer having to spend $350,000 to $400,000 on a house, they'd be spending $500,000 to $600,000 on a house, because the wages would just inflate and the prices would inflate. We wouldn't actually fix the fucking problem, because immigration is a goddamn red herring. Because immigration is a way in which they confuse and trick people into blaming something that actually isn't the problem, so that they can continue taking our liberty, growing the fucking state, growing the power of the state, continuously getting more and more power, increasing the fucking prisons, and making the middle class fucking shrink and shrink and shrink. And we're not addressing the real problems when we talk about immigration. And that is what makes immigration a threat to those things, is because it allows the state to continue to do all of the evil shit it's doing. And we keep pretending like this is the problem when it's fucking not.
It's not. So what I'm trying to say is that you're comparing current price with the price of these goods depressed by these illegal wages. And I'm saying that's the reason that they hire people illegal. That's the reason that they choose illegals over Americans, because they can offer their prices lower. They get more sales. They save money on labor.
Okay, so if we get rid of that, what happens? Price increase.
If we get rid of that,
housing prices increase. Right. How's it help anybody?
Increase compared to a depressed system. This is how it should have been. These are the prices that are, in theory, not raised from anything.
No,
these are what the market
only thing depressing
should have
the system
reflected.
is state regulation. State regulation is depressing these things. The migrants that are working are doing so outside of the law. They're doing so outside of the depression that the government is intending to put on the housing market.
The depression comes from the fact that they are willing to work for a fraction of the wage, which allows them to pass on those savings.
So they're voluntarily working. But you want to get rid of that liberty, right? And then, but somehow this is
I want to require the employers to hire Americans, and I understand that they lose the benefit of saving.
Does liberty only apply to Americans, or does it apply to humans?
What?
Well, so you're saying, like, you want to get rid of a voluntary transaction between an employer and an employee, right? So that we can get rid of them, so that we can force them to hire Americans at higher wages, and that'll like fix things. But if the prompt is about liberty, right? Does liberty only apply to the whites? Does it only apply to the American citizens that have or the people with a card? Like, how does that work? How is it a threat? How is it a threat to liberty, right? For an employer to voluntarily hire someone to do a job?
Because he would otherwise be forced to hire Americans. And the reason he doesn't is to take the benefit of depressing the cost of whatever his business is.
Yes, he lowers the cost by hiring someone at a lower wage.
Could I ask a clarifying question? Is that
liberty?
No,
are judges able to? I don't know.
We're going to
That's okay.
Yeah, we're going to judges now anyway, so it's perfect.
Oh, okay.
Timing. Okay, you can go first this time, and then we're going to go to Sarah and then Oliver. So go ahead.
If that's okay. I
Yeah,
know that we said Sarah was going to go first. Pensapple, I feel like I'm getting a little confused by your argument, where I'm not exactly sure if you're arguing if there's an economic benefit or not. Sometimes it feels like you're shifting between having an economic argument and then having like a national self-identity argument and then having like a moral adherence to the laws argument. And I guess if we could just focus on the economic argument, you seem to agree that there's a depression of costs, right? That like costs essentially go down because illegal immigrants are willing to work at those prices. That to me, and maybe you could make this case, that to me sounds beneficial to all Americans when costs are low.
It's beneficial in a vacuum.
Okay,
when you're only
so
looking at the
if
cost
you
of
could
goods.
if you could make an economic argument why deporting immigrants and increasing the cost of goods
So
would be
right.
yeah. If you
So
and just focus on
economic
economics.
more
prosperity,
important to
which is
me,
proper.
more important to me than the cost of goods, more important to me than saving money at the grocery store is having a job, right? So when you get rid of these workers, those jobs still have to be done. The reason that they hire them is to take the clear and economic benefit of saving money on cost. So when you take that away from the business, I understand that costs are going to go up. But for every single one of those jobs, when you put an American in it, that is significantly more impactful for that American than saving money at the grocery store. And when you congregate all of this together, I think all Americans benefit from Americans working these jobs, even if the costs go up, because the money isn't getting sent out of the country through remittances. That, like, I understand why illegal labor benefits these large businesses and companies, and they certainly are paying the government to keep it this way. I have no illusions about that.
This feels, and maybe I'm projecting on you. I really don't want to. It feels a little strange coming from a conservative because it seems like what you're arguing. Because obviously you would concede that Americans aren't currently working at the cost that they are, right? That they don't want to work at $5 an hour. That's just not something they're interested in, right?
That's right.
It seems like then what you are arguing for, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is like a livable wage. You want to increase the minimum wage. So
absolutely. I think that Fabian's approach is actually going to depress even American wages, because when you have all these illegals working for $5, an American might get paid $15 instead of $20. Like, it does, I think, have an effect. But what I'm saying is, even acknowledging the cost effect, and what I'm saying is that when you have these illegals here, when you look at things in a vacuum, like cost of goods and the prices on the shelves, there is a clear benefit. That's why they do this. That's why they hire illegals. Those jobs are still in demand. They're not going to stop shipping the goods, but they will be forced to pay an American a proper wage. And I do want those Americans to get those wages. I think they are depressed by the fact that they're either not getting the job because an illegal is working that job, which is in demand, or even the wages that they would be getting are going to be deflated because, okay, there might not be, an illegal to truck this, shipment up, so I have to hire an American here. But generally speaking, those decisions do affect American wages. And so I actually probably agree with Fabian. I don't actually particularly like minimum wage laws, but to me, it's like, if we have a minimum wage law, then, like, you're right. It might be a voluntary transaction between a business and a person to work for $3 an hour, but I would say that is against the law and that shouldn't be allowed. But I generally just want the market to be not depressed by the availability of people who are willing to work for way less. And there's a lot of reasons why they're willing to work for less. And it's not because they're bearing all of the same living expenses that Americans do. I mean, I know, having lived in Maryland, I know many houses that have like 15 to 20 people living there. We know they're illegal. They're laborers. They send their money back to home in Mexico or wherever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So
yeah. Just one last follow-up question. I think what I would say is, let's just live in a hypothetical situation where you advocate the policies that you're looking for, and you start recognizing that although wages have increased, costs have increased higher relative to wages.
Employment would also increase, right?
Okay.
Significantly. Every single one of those jobs is an American who has a job.
Is what you mean, not necessarily employment.
It's contested, obviously, because
in those jobs now.
We would probably recognize that some businesses would go under because they don't have labor costs.
Could not survive, if you could not even survive without undercutting legal wages, then then
Right. So
that's
let's
correct.
Right. So I guess my question is, it seems like you recognize that there's definitely some iffy circumstances when it comes to the economy. There's some pros, there's some
Well,
cons.
I understand that there's a lot of people who benefit from the illegal supply of labor,
Like
and that those
all
benefits,
Americans.
when taken away, will negatively affect the people that are currently benefiting from that arrangement. I do get that, but
You're benefiting by cheaper prices.
I'm marginally benefiting. Like if in a vacuum,
That
I'm
seems
benefiting.
strange. That
Like
seems
when
strange
if
that
I'm
you
only looking
concede
at
that
the
you're
prices.
marginally benefiting, because that
Right,
sounds
because
that's
if you look at it in a vacuum, it's objectively, if I'm paying a lower price, I guess I'm benefiting. But if
What
my
do you-
neighborhood is becoming more and more unemployed, and there's more and more violent crime and any of these other derivatives of illegal immigration, then it's not worth it. So I recognize like there can be a marginal benefit, but what I'm pushing back on is that I'm not necessarily saying I think that cost decrease justifies all of the other issues, which I'm not bringing up because I'm not trying to invoke red herrings into this argument. But I do like. Okay.
Yeah, I think that you got that. Oh, Sarah, what you got here? I hate saying that.
I think my bigger question here is whether we're defining border restrictions the same way in the prompt, because I'm recognizing you're both kind of saying like sink or swim concepts, but at the same time, you're both like applying it differently. So Fabian and then Pentuple, can you explain to me how you define border restrictions?
Yeah, so I would define border restrictions as any government action that treats the national border as some sense of shared or communal property, and then treats people differently from a legal status perspective based upon where they are on that border, right? So I would say deportation. I would wrap up into border restrictions, right? Now, if we're talking I think the most literal interpretation might just be only enforcing the southern border, but like I think everybody recognizes that like it's important to recognize, or everybody recognizes that it's important to know or to say that deportations are obviously part of that immigration policy that deals with restricting of the border, because we're talking about it, I guess, more colloquially from like the open versus closed border perspective.
Okay. And then Pentuple to you, please.
I'm operating on the same definition.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I think that the
All right.
difference is that I do have a very America-centric view of this. I'm viewing this as an American. I'm prioritizing
too.
Americans.
Me too.
I am significantly less interested in the benefits that the global economy has from this. Because
Me as
from their
well.
perspective, there's
I don't give a fuck what happens to Somalia. They could all burn, and it wouldn't bother me. I wouldn't lose a
Well,
wink.
see, I would say if
Well,
I
Wouldn't
insofar-
bomb them,
talking about
but if they like
Somalia, I
implode
would
of their
want-
own design, like whatever.
insofar that
that's
it
up to
affects
them.
our
would-
supply, right?
I guess earlier you were kind of going
Importing a
through
lot from
semantics
Somalia other than
where
people.
here's why I
Fair.
have the question, because Fabian was poking at Pentuple on the legal immigration versus illegal immigration, and that's why I wanted to confirm maybe we were operating under the same border border restrictions definition, because if Pentuple is saying, yeah, if you come here legally, fine, it's good, and if you're hired legally, fine, it's good, but then Fabian was kind of combating that as well with saying that oh god, I can't even remember how it was, but you guys were combating on legal versus illegal. And so when we come to
Just to clarify.
border restrictions, I want to know and understand that are we all saying, okay, legal immigration good, illegal immigration bad? Because this can change the terms of what we're fighting
Yeah.
for within the prompt, right?
I was attacking his usage of illegal because he was using the term illegal as a way to dismiss the argument, because he's still because I was talking about the restriction on the labor market by saying that there's only a certain amount of people in. And then he's like, well, illegal. And then I'm like, are you for unlimited legal immigration? And then he said that he wasn't for unlimited legal immigration. So he is in favor of restriction of the amount of people that can come into this country, regardless of the criteria. But that is why I made the distinction between illegal and legal. Me personally, I don't care about that distinction between illegal and legal, other than for breaking down data or better understanding the problem, because I'm against the government saying that there is any level of restriction on people coming across the border, because I'm advocating for the incentives that are causing the people we don't want to come here. I don't care about the government, and central planners coming up with a magic number of, fucked up people that somehow makes it work.
I'll give you a quick answer, Sarah, just to let
Okay.
you get back on your train of thought. But when it comes to legal and illegal immigration, I'm not pro unlimited legal immigration, because I think there would be consequences to that. But for the purposes of this prompt, when we're talking about liberty and self-governance, legal immigration is the democratic law of the land that we've passed. I don't think that violates our liberty rights in the same way that having unregulated against the laws that we've passed democratically in this country does. So when we're talking about like workers coming in, the reason I objected earlier is because I'm not against hiring, specialty workers overseas who are, maybe a,
H-1B.
master in a particular craft. I'm not against engaging with the global economy, but generally speaking, when we're looking at things like manual labor in the South, there's a financial reason that this is happening, and there is a positive and negative effects from it. And the positive effects don't outweigh the negative effects. That's where I stand when I say, like, yeah, the costs might go up, but more people will have jobs. For every job that an illegal's working that gets hired to an American, because it's a job that needs to be done per the market, that's more valuable to me than seeing rising costs. Having my neighbors be able to get a paycheck, having unemployment grow in this country is not worth lower prices to me. And there's a lot of math that probably goes into like working that out exactly, but I won't pretend to know what it is. But generally speaking, I take a very like American focused position. I want our system to prioritize Americans, and if we can benefit from like global trade and bringing other workers here for some reasons, like we have a shortage or something like that, I'm fine with that if it's done legally, because that doesn't violate the liberty interest that we're talking about. When we're talking about self-governance, that does mean we can bring in immigrants. It also means that we can deny them. But when we're forced into a position where we can only ever accept them, that there's certainly no liberty there.
Okay.
If I conceal carry in New York City, am I violating American liberty?
Hey, you're talking to the wrong guy for that one. I'm a Second Amendment
I'm just
lawyer.
saying, you keep invoking that.
Wait, so why do you-
law is a violation of liberty?
Well, hold on, we're
That's
gonna get into that in a second. Hold on, we got
No.
Hold on, pause.
You've broken the American idea of liberty by violating the law that corrupt government officials did against our liberty. So actually exercising your human rights is a violation of liberty.
Why do you keep phrasing immigration laws like they were cooked up behind the scenes?
It's not
Gentlemen, the host
Everybody,
is speaking.
I got you. Don't worry. I'll just mute everybody. That's how I do things here. We don't do none of this nice. I'm my speaking. I'm just gonna take over. All right, Paul. Listen, you got about 2-3 minutes here, and then you have to ask questions, and then we're going back to open. Oh, we lost somebody. Oh, did we lose him? Oh, who did we lose?
Sarah.
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm just stepping away to go use the ladies' room.
Oh, okay, you're good. All right, go ahead, Balderson. What you got for us?
So this time I will start with Pentuple, and once again, it's basically the same question. What is your plan going to do to the remaining middle class, and is this going to transfer more wealth to the upper class? Because what you're proposing, and I understand that you put it as this is going to be a slight increase, I don't think you understand how much of your food gets picked by Mexicans for almost no money. And when that cost increase happens, historically, the people that can absorb that increase are the large companies. And those large companies thereafter, after the small companies fold, they raise the prices, but they don't hire back the workers. They typically more mechanize and streamline the operation. In Northern California, the cannabis industry is a good example of this, where they've basically ran out every mom and pop operation in the whole state. Like, and I live in Humboldt, So
Oh.
between me and town, there used to be 100 grows. And those 100 grows each had 2 or 3 workers. Those 2 or 3 workers went and spent their money at the grocery store, went and spent it at all the other businesses in town, yada yada. Since the regulations that they've put into place, and these now there's all those small businesses are gone. There's one lady that has a grow between us and town, and she's the heiress to the Sears Roebuck fortune. And the town, all the stores in town are closed. So what you're proposing is going to shut down all the middle class and small business, and maneuver the money to the upper class and set us into a rich and poor system.
Well,
All right, go ahead. Here's what we're gonna do. This. You go ahead and respond. You got 1 minute to respond, and then Fabian can fight. All right, go ahead.
I got to ask Fabian another question.
Yeah.
Well, it's too late. We run out of judges' time. Go ahead.
Where did I want to start with this? So I would reject the characterization that removing this is going to benefit the upper class. I think the upper class is currently who is benefiting from this. When we have a market for these labor or for these goods, right? They can't just, like, the market's undefeated. The market rate is going to figure out what people are willing to pay and what people aren't willing to pay. All I'm saying is that there will be a increase when the benefit was a decreased cost of goods. But what I'm saying is, even though we're paying more, when all of those jobs, however many millions of jobs, are replaced with Americans, that American is certainly entering the middle class if they're, responsible and they're getting a manual labor type salary. Like, there's a real concrete benefit for them, where when you're talking about prices can only go up so much before the market corrects it. So, like, we have depressed markets, and returning to normal feels like a negative because we've seen what that depression can do to the markets. But when we're talking about at large, I think that actually the middle class would benefit, because there would be more people that are earning a wage that can get them into what is considered the middle class. For every single job that is replaced, because and like we're saying, if the job isn't replaced, then there's really not a market for it. If the goods aren't sold at that price, there's really not a market for those goods at that price. So the market's going to balance out. The market's going to exist, and whatever the wages are and whatever the price of those goods are is going to be very, very case specific. I don't know what it's going to depend on what work. It's going to depend on what good.
How in the fuck?
So all I'm saying is, like,
how can you make
that's
the claim
basic
that there
economics,
is
no?
no market for a job when, after the government comes in and artificially restricts the labor, that the job disappears, therefore there's no market? If the job currently exists, then there's clearly a fucking market for it. What do you mean?
No, the job exists when the market allows illegals to work. It exists.
Yeah, the market exists when we have liberty, when we have people
Right.
that are
But we're
allowed to
talking about
work
jobs
for an
like picking
employer
food. Does
based
the food
upon
not get
their
picked?
liberty and the employer's liberty to hire people. And then when the government comes in and puts in increased regulations, that job disappears. And then you're like, but that's good because American, and that's liberty, and that's property rights. It's the exact opposite of property rights and liberty.
I don't understand that.
Okay,
We're
liberty
talking
is
about-
not an American asset. Like, you seem to be like in this like weird.
Right. This is which is
it's
why
almost
I
like
clarified that you're
Marx,
you're a
like you're almost
globalist.
arguing like a Marxist, but it's like a conservative one, because you're like doing this like conservative version of commodity fetishization or fetishism,
No,
right? Or
I'm
like
saying,
reification. Like,
if
you're
I need
talking
to
about
hire
like
somebody-
liberty is a finite
let's take a
resource that
specific-
belongs
let's take
to
a
the
specific
American
concrete
identity.
example of what I'm saying.
Like no, liberty is a qualia
Fabian,
that is a
we heard you.
that is
Let's go-
negative rights. And then
let's
you're
go-
talking about introducing.
Fabian, I know it.
No,
I
you're
hear
talking
you.
about
Fabian, I
introducing
hear you.
government
I hear
control
you.
and calling that liberty, and then saying that the market never existed for an item, even though
Right.
it already did, and it
Right.
only disappeared when the government
It
took it
did
away.
at that depressed wage rate. If they can't afford to pay what
Is that
Americans would demand,
exploitation?
then there
I feel
is
like I'm
no
just talking to
market
a
for it.
straight
That's
up
an
comment.
objective
Is it
statement.
exploitation of
No.
labor to depress
Can we
the wages
let's use a
by hiring
specific
illegals?
example, Fabian? Let's use a specific example.
This is why I call
If I'm
Republican
currently
socialist,
hiring
'cause he's
somebody
literally
for
arguing just like Marx.
$5, If I hire somebody at $5 an hour to come be my paralegal, okay,
Okay.
that job market exists at $5. I understand that.
Correct.
If I'm not able to hire somebody at $5, I have to pay them at least 15, right? And I go out and I'm
Right.
hiring an American. If I cannot hire an American at $15, then there is no job market for that job at $15. What I'm saying is, in
Correct.
that
There's
case,
no
if
job
I
market at
need,
that new
listen,
price that was
if I
set by
need a
government restrictions.
paralegal, if I need a paralegal and cannot go without it, I would have to pay that $15. I would
Yes,
pay,
you
if
just
the
made my
market
argument
demands
for me.
20. No, it's the opposite.
The market is not demanding 20. The market is artificially controlled.
We don't know what
by
the market's
you
demanding
putting it-
because it's all case specific. What I'm saying
No,
is that
when you say
are
when you
saying,
no
look,
no we do
the jo-
know we
let's-
know that the
Fabian,
paralegal
Fabian,
has a
if
job
you
for
are
$5,
hiring
and the
illegals to
government
pick
steps in
crops,
and takes away
Fabian,
labor out of the labor market. We know
If
that
you-
by your
listen,
own.
I need to
example.
flip it. If
Okay.
you are hiring illegals at $5 an hour to come pick your crops, and you are no
Mhm.
longer able to hire them for that, you have to hire Americans to do this. Otherwise, you make nothing back on your investment. So you will go and you will hire Americans for 15 because that is
False.
better than doing nothing.
False.
There
This
will become
assumes
a
this
market.
assumes all
for-
jobs.
if it- no,
This is
It
completely false. I have
assumes
to
the job is
correct this.
necessary. That's
No,
all
no,
it
no,
does.
right.
It
Right,
assumes
you
that
have-
the job
hold on,
has to
pause.
be done.
Exactly.
And the market goes
Which is an
both ways
economic
from the
mistake.
worker
It's a huge
and the
mistake. No,
employer.
I'm gonna correct this extreme misunderstanding. What you've just done is you've baked into your example that all jobs in the labor market,
They're
and
not.
all
That's why I
commodities.
said there
hold on,
is
pause.
not a
No,
market for some jobs. I did not do that, Fabian. You're the one who's mistaken. And now you want to go on a 2-minute rant about how you're mistaken?
No, I'm not going to go on a 2-minute rant. I'm just going to educate you on basic economics for a second. You have assumed that all jobs in the market, or at the very least, all
No.
of the ones being done.
When I said,
Stop.
Fabian,
Stop.
you're wrong.
Stop.
When I
I'm gonna
said
finish my
there is
point.
not
You're
a job
fucking wrong.
market for some
You're
of these
trying to
jobs
run
when you
out the
don't have
clock
an
on me
illegal
proving
wage.
you're wrong.
No,
You're
Fabian,
gonna have
you're
to eventually
literally
just take this
getting it
L
wrong.
instead of just talking. No, you're getting it wrong. You're getting it wrong. You have baked into your to your economic calculations that all of
Again,
the,
I did not do
Stop.
that.
Gibbs, can we have them go one at a
Why are
time?
you saying that?
Stop.
Why are you saying that if I didn't
because
do it?
it's true and you won't let
No,
me
it's not
finish.
true.
I'm about to cook your
It's
ass.
not true.
And
Not
you're
all jobs
running
will
like a
be
scared
replaced.
Girl. You're running. Stop.
Fabian,
So
this is like
no,
a retard
you're
moment
gonna stop.
having.
You're gonna stop. You're gonna stop. You have assumed.
So do
that
we really have to listen to this? You're going to go
I'm just
into
going
the
to claim
same
victory
wrong
at this
thing.
point because he refuses to allow me to make any arguments.
Yeah, go ahead. Just go ahead. Go
You've
ahead.
spoken 4 times as much as I have in this entire debate, Fabian. What I'm saying is that when you have a job that must be done, such as the crops must be picked on this farm, and you are no longer able to hire people at
Right,
5,
you've reformulated
and
the
the only
new
workers that are
argument.
available are demanding 15 or more, the market will result in those jobs being taken if they are necessary. That's why I said if there's jobs that won't be replaced, it's because the market didn't demand it. If the market does demand it, they will hire workers at American wages. When you're telling me that I'm
change your
assuming
argument.
that all of the jobs are necessary, that's you're just not listening or you're missing that.
Hold on, let him,
No,
let him,
you-
let him take
so
the
you
answer. Go ahead.
changed the argument,
It's so
right? Because you
simple.
saw. No, you've changed the argument because you saw where I was going. Because you were labeling all of these markets as if they were completely elastic. They're not. Okay.
No,
Some
I-
jobs are. You were. Some jobs are going to
I
disappear.
was
Stop.
literally explicitly
Oh my
not,
God.
Fabian.
You gotta let him answer. You gotta let him answer. Let him answer.
No, go ahead.
You
Go
weren't
ahead.
once you just like kept running and then decided to change your argument. That's fine.
No, I
Let's
didn't
just assume
change
that.
my argument.
Oh,
Let him answer.
are you done?
I made the same argument the entire time.
Yeah.
Oh
don't
my
let him
god.
answer. I don't want to
Pentuple,
teach you
shut
again. You
up.
know
Fabian,
this.
continue with your argument unabated.
Let him answer. Let him answer.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
not all of these jobs are perfectly elastic. Okay, some jobs are at a are already at a market price. That is the current market price. When you start restricting labor, you're going to increase costs. Some jobs are going to disappear. For example, when we talk about fruit picking and things like that, there are a lot of machines that require a large monetary investment that can do this job. Like berry picking is one of them, right? They hire a lot of people to do berry picking. There are like John Deere attachments on these mega fucking tractors, right? That just do that job. But the reason they hire immigrants to do it is because it's cheaper to hire immigrants than it is to purchase that machine at the amount of capital that is required to purchase those machines, and then the cost of that capital. Now, what you're going to see is exactly as Balderson described, which is that companies with a large amount of capital, right? Like, the Monsantos of today, right? Because Monsanto doesn't technically exist, right? They're going to be able to absorb those costs because what they're going to do is they're going to take that capital investment and they're going to delete those jobs from the market, right? What they're going to do, and that's going to probably be beneficial. And then there are other people that are hiring people. So what you've done is you've taken competition out of the market by getting rid of family-owned farms, right? Getting rid of multi-generational family farms and instead restricting the supply of labor so that it benefits large corporations. And in the immediacy, what you are going to see is those large corporations, they are absolutely going to be able to reduce costs by investing that capital. But the problem is that you're going to get rid of the competition in the market from people that can hire immigrants or even hire Americans at low wages, because all of those farms that have illegals working at them, they have some Americans working at them too. They're not fucking pure 100% illegals. So you're going to get rid of those jobs, then you're going to get rid of competition, and then what you're going to do is you're going to see an increase in price. And the idea, the prompt is
all of this.
Right.
You're the one who just changed the argument now.
The prompt is trifold. Is that immigration restriction affects economic prosperity negatively, and you just keep accepting this. So, like, you're defeated over and over on this argument.
No, you changed. I can concede everything you just said because you've changed the argument to include the particular job where machines can replace it. I understand there's other variables. The fucking
argument. You wouldn't let me make the argument
because I'm
before.
speaking in a vacuum about the job market, and I'm saying if there's a market for the jobs,
the job market is not in a vacuum. That's not how economics works.
No shit. Obviously. We're having a conversation about the principles of how these immigration policies affect us. In some cases, certainly not all, you're not suggesting every single job can be replaced with a machine. I can concede that some of these jobs, many of these jobs, may be the case where a machine falls in between legal and illegal immigrants, or between an American citizen worker and an illegal worker. I can concede all of that. What I'm not conceding is that if the job market exists for a job, but they will not hire anybody to do it at a wage that an American would accept, then there is no meeting in that market. The employers and the workers aren't meeting. But when there's a demand, like you said, for the inelastic goods, they will have to do it. So it depends on all of the cases, of course. It depends on like the specific case, but we're talking about the principle that
of these
if you take away their ability to access illegal wages, now the market has to meet between what the employer is willing to pay and what the workers are willing to work for. When you take that equation and you allow a population to come in and undercut this side of it, then of course there's a benefit to this side.
Okay, but here's the problem, right? Is like we keep talking about price, and the problem is that we're talking about price in like a relative term to what we understand costs are today, right? But as you know, wages have gone up, costs have gone up, right? So the price isn't like a magic number, right? Like if I say $5 for eggs, it actually depends on how much a house costs or how much the average wage is, et cetera, right? So the real thing that you have to be talking about is, has a government regulation or has a new innovation, whatever, changed the value of labor or artificially restricted the labor supply? And what you were talking about is artificially restricting the labor supply. And so it doesn't matter if those businesses hire people at higher wages. That's not really what's important. What's important is that you have driven the relative cost of food up in this country and in such a way that it is going to cost everyone more money to feed their families. That is what you do when you artificially restrict the labor supply for low skill, low wage immigrant labor. You've fucked up economic prosperity in this country.
Hold on, before you respond,
continue to ignore the worker who would be taking that.
Hold on. We're going to.
I'm not ignoring. I just explained how I'm not ignoring.
Hold on. Before y'all go,
no income. It doesn't matter what the prices are.
We're going to closings. All right, you're first anyway, with Double, so you can respond. You have 4 minutes. All right, after they're done, judges, send it to me individually who won, and then I'm going to come to y'all afterwards and ask y'all loud, and then you can say who won and tell us briefly why. And we'll wrap this bad boy up. All right, we are.
I'm not much one for closings. I'll just.
So you got 4 minutes. Go ahead. Starting now. Go ahead.
Okay. My position is that border restrictions protect liberty interests, property interests, and economic prosperity. We don't have liberty if we don't have self-governance. I feel like that's a fairly easy point to make. Property rights are defined by the ability to exclude. And so the national property rights are just as real as individual property rights, even if they're not as tangible. And when it comes to economic prosperity, I understand and can recognize that the depressed wages bring down immediate costs that we bear, but the other economic impacts of having people work these jobs, I believe, is significantly outweighing those costs. And the concern that the market will just, basically make costs that we would be unable to purchase these goods or housing or whatever. My main point is just that the market will always balance it out. There's these concerns happen in a vacuum. Like, there are a billion variables into this, and every single industry, every single type of job, every single state, locality that makes these changes is going to be affected differently. But ultimately, we can't have liberty if we don't have self-governance, and we can't have self-governance if there is no self. We can't have property rights without the right to exclude on a national and an individual level. Individuals bear the cost of not enforcing that national border. It's not all of us, but it's people on the border. There's lists of thousands of people who have real concrete damages from the lack of border enforcement, whether it's cartels carving through their properties or destroying fences or whatever. I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm putting American interests as the first step in the analysis. That's what I care about. So border restrictions do protect all three of those things.
All right, thank you so much. Let's reset this. And you're good to go whenever, baby. 4 minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, I would reiterate that the primary narrative that I set in the beginning, which is that we've falsely tied so many problems to immigration. And that by tying those problems to immigration, it allows, as it has historically with prohibition and in other eras, for us to displace our anger and hatred on, poor people, refugees, or shit people that the government has invited over here, instead of actually focusing on the parasites that are causing all of these actual problems. And I think when you look into the data and you look into the numbers, that you will find that the culprit is never that immigrants exist. It is that we are allowing unviable immigrants into this country because we are paying them. And that process is never going to be stopped by an administration that, sends ICE into cities against protests, but can't deport 1 million people. He can't even deport 10% of the people that occurred in the Biden administration in his first 15 months. It's a complete red herring, and it doesn't actually deal with the issue. Now, more so on the topic of do immigration restrictions negatively affect liberty, property rights, and economic prosperity? Well, obviously, it affects liberty. Liberty is not an American asset. It's not a commodity that can be bought and sold. It's not a commodity. Liberty is not something you negotiate like you do prices or wages. It is a state of the government not infringing upon your rights. And it's not uniquely American to have liberty. It is something that either belongs to people or as our founding fucking fathers stated, that it is an unalienable right. Right? Like, we hold these truths to be self-evident doesn't mean we hold these truths to be self-evident, but really only for white people and really only in America. And liberty is just like a stolen concept for the rest of the world. Like, that's not how that works. This self-governance identity argument is just like a stolen concept fallacy, because he keeps going against the very liberty that he says he's supporting. In terms of property rights, it's obviously a violation of property rights. It is definitionally a violation of property rights. When you tell an employer that they're not legally allowed to use their property in voluntary transactions with other people, that's a violation of their property rights. In the opening statement, he brought up these people whose property have been trampled on the southern border. What do you mean? That's the government stopping those people from shooting people that cross their fucking border. That's a violation of property rights, and that's completely separate from immigration restriction. They should be allowed to shoot people that hop their fucking fence, or at the very least sick the dogs on them and tell them to go away, whatever gentleman's principle you want to follow. This idea that technically it's good for property rights because I've turned property rights into a collective right that is owned by all of the people and the will of the people. Well, I mean, Pentuple defeated his own argument because he actually gave a very libertarian argument, which is property is defined by the right to exclude. Except in a democracy, you have losers, and those losers that don't win those elections, or in a republic, right? They don't have that right to exclude. So it defeats the very concept that collective property is real property unless there is an individual that has the right to exclude people from the usage of their property. And Americans don't have that fucking right. What we have is this democracy where we vote and then 35,000 ballots get fucking thrown in Alexandria at the last minute and then oops, we lose, right? Like that's not a fucking right. And collective property isn't fucking real. Lastly, on economic prosperity, you know, I think we showcased, and I think even he showcased that economic prosperity would go down, and then he just kind of coped a little bit on it at the end. But nevertheless, I do want to just challenge one thing on that economic prosperity is this, he keeps bringing up this idea of like, well, sending money out of the country is actually harming us, and it does lead to less economic activity and less economic transactions. But the thing is that if you understand that inflation is an increase in the money supply, you could actually argue that there's a benefit to sending money out of the country. That's why the US dollar is backed by Saudi oil, because we have trillions of dollars outside of the country so that we don't have inflation. It creates deflation. So on all three counts, I think I handedly win on this.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. I think I already have all the judges' votes in here, so we can go ahead and start. We'll get this wrapped up. All right, judges, who won and why? Keep it kind of brief because we're close on time. I like to be nice to everybody's schedules. Yeah, I know we've been real brief tonight. But let's go. We'll start with Balderson here. You look like you're excited and ready to go.
I had it actually pretty close. I chose Fabian. Really the decider on that. I think if Pentuple did better with his opener, your opener was kind of all over the place, and your closing. Maybe either develop a rhetoric.
That's all right.
Yeah, you know, you did a lot. His closing was not near as his opening was beautiful. I didn't think his closing was near as good. That really kind of is the deciding factor on it. So ended up, you know, you kind of little, you know, back and forth on each of these things. I had a boxing like 4 and 2.
Dude, let's go. I respect it.
So
I'll protest the other judges, but that looks really objective. I appreciate it.
So yeah.
All right, thank you so much. All right, let's go to Sarah here. What you got? Who you got? Who won and why?
She's muted.
Thank you. Personally, I'm a little all over the place with both of you and your arguments. In one stance, I was going to say my answer is you both lost because nobody was really convincing to me, right? But I had to choose. So I personally don't think you guys really knocked into the prompt the way it was meant to be knocked into, right? Liberty, property rights, and economic prosperity. Fabian, I would say, like, we all recognize liberty as an American right. We all understand it that way. And then for you to say, well, liberty is something for everybody. Well, like, not necessarily, because they don't have the enforcement arm to take it. But also, Pentuple, to you, like, you were kind of like, a little half-hearted on the economics piece with the understanding of how the industry would work, but I don't think it would work quite as clearly as you anticipate, right? But it was just kind of all over the place between both of you. Nobody really had a clear and concise answer, but I had to pick. Fabian, you were really good at, I disagree with a lot of everything you say, but you were very good at elaborating it and backing it up. Pentuple, I'm actually disappointed with you because you were not as concise as you could have been with these pieces. So I love you both, but Fabian, I have to give it to you for the W, only because you were good at elaborating and better with your arguments.
All right, thank you so much. And Hunter here.
Yeah. So, Fabian, my criticism of you is that you have a college freshman's understanding of economics. But Pentuple, my criticism of you is that you have a middle schooler's understanding of economics. So, I find it frustrating, Pentuple, that you strawman Fabian about caring about global economics over American economics even after corrected, and you did so 3 or 4 times. You said at one point, I won't pretend to know the math. So how do you know the conclusion of the math? I think that your only consistency was that you consistently showed motivated ad hoc reasoning. Fabian, I appreciate that you were very clear about your demarcation between morality and politics. I'd give you points off for constantly interrupting Pentuple, but I would probably be interrupting too if I was so constantly purposefully misconstrued. You also have motivated reasoning, but at least it follows coherently from axioms and thoughtful arguments. Your ideology is exhausting and stupid, but it's consistent and persuasive. I declare Fabian the winner.
All right.
Thanks, I guess.
Yeah.
I hope that was fair.
There's like the last two people. It's just like Fabian won, and I fucking hate it.
Hold
And I
on.
don't like you.
Look, you shit on my entire ideology and everything that I care about consistently throughout your debate.
That's fair. That's
I'm
fair. That's
not
fair.
convinced by your arguments, but you did a great job laying them out. I think that
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
as fair as I could be as a judge and a progressive and a, like.
And let's guess what, guys. Speaking of
I
that,
feel like I got told I'm one of the good ones. You know what I mean?
listen, next season, anybody doesn't care. We're gonna have an algorithm ranking the judges.
What do you want me to
so
do? What do you want me to
everybody
do?
hates,
just
don't wanna
fucking-
get called back,
No.
but it was good. Thank y'all for being here, Fabian. Send me your ring size and a mailing address, and you'll get something here in a couple weeks. And thanks for everybody that was a part of this. This was a great first season. I'm excited. I'll be posting when the Grand Prix starts next, and we can get excited going forward. We're going to be doing the Grand Prix in honor of Ical Rich since he passed recently, and we want to honor him in all the things, so it's debate related that we do here. So thank y'all so much for coming today, and y'all have a good rest of y'all's night.
Bye.
Hell
Thank you
yeah, dude.
guys.
Adios, muchachos.
Bye.
Nice to see you guys. I'm happy to be I'm coming back.
Thank you for being one of the good ones, Fabian. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, y'all.